In this video, I will examine the underlying characteristics and factions of the left. And in the following videos, I'll examine the right. But in this video, I'll be covering the first part of it, and let's say the biggest part of it, because it's the core part of it. Communism. It is important to understand that I am only covering mainstream political subcategories of the West and not specific ideologies, and that the nature of this investigation will be broad and filled with generalizations. I will argue by making a claim and explaining it logically so that it is apparent how I got there. Now, if you disagree, which is ever present in politics, I welcome you to write them down in the comments. However, I may not agree with it, but I respect your view and I would fight for your ability to say it. So, communism. Something that you have to understand is that communism is the origin of almost the entirety of the left. And thus ideologies that we put on the left are those most similar with its principles. Communism as an ideology started in 1848 with the writing of the Communist Manifesto by Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels. As context, it emerged in a time of rapid social and technological change during the Industrial Revolution, where there was severe and deep injustice, particularly in the newly formed factories. For thousands of years prior, humans had bought, sold things in their small communities and towns, such as meat from the butcher or specialist goods from the merchant. However, beginning with industrialization, all of these professions suddenly amalgamated into one, with huge factories employing hundreds of people owned by very few, very wealthy individuals taking the previously fulfilling and autonomous roles held before urbanization. The whole idea of communism is that it references a class struggle, of an idea that transcends borders, which Marx argued was a distraction from the real class problem. In the national struggles of the proletariats from different countries, they point out and bring to front the common interests of the entire proletariat, independently of all nationality. Now, that is something from chapter 2 of the Communist Manifesto. This gives us the first principle of the left, that it is strictly anti-patriotic and anti-nationalistic. This has also been extended to being anti-religious, as much of communist thought is strictly anti-religious, arguing that religions are, quote, the opioid of the masses, which fools and subdues them to the control of the bourgeois. Secondly, he argues that people deserve to be more than just cogs in a machine, that some people shouldn't be better than one another, and that every man is same and as deserving as each other to the basic parts of life. The owner of a factory is not entitled to his large salary because he hasn't done the work. This sets up the second principle of leftism, of equity, where the things should be distributed based on work done. Although not explicitly said by Marx, this has been frequently interpreted as complete equality for all. Now, the third, although undoubtedly not final, principle of communism is of progress, of an eventual struggle between workers and bosses that over time would benefit the workers. This is crucial, as this is probably the largest principle, and it manifests in the ideal of progress, that the past was so much worse than how it is now, and that the progress has been almost exponential. Now, this lies in direct conflict with conservatism, which argues that we have lessons to learn from the past to help us now. This does not seem important now, but is crucial when looking at other parts of ideologies. The fourth principle is of the oppressors against the oppressed, which is clearly defined in almost all leftist ideologies. The oppressor in communism is the bourgeois, and the oppressed are the proletariat. So, those are the four main principles of communism. But I guarantee you it's not a final and comprehensive list. I could make a whole video on the different components, and keep in mind I'm only talking about the theoretical communism envisioned by Marx. I'm not even going to go into all the different subcategories. Now, for a point that I will argue in a later video, reaching utopia is impossible, and there will never be a time on Earth where we will live in a perfect world. Due to the almost impossible nature of communism and its attempts to reach utopia in vain, much of it becomes what has become called virtue signaling, where action is taken to make one seem or act in spirit of the revolution. To oversimplify it, it is a way for communists to show their commitment to the principles of the movement, even if they do not truly believe it, or they are not truly taking the most effective action for those aims, hence why it's called virtue signaling. They aren't truly virtuous, but they signal it to everyone else. Now, I mention this because this is a common theme that pops up in a lot of leftist ideologies. It is of the signaling, where they signal to each other about it, but not necessarily do the most effective thing. Then again, it happens in a lot of human life, so, oh well. Now, the greatest strength of communism is its lure. The aim of utopia has made it so tempting for so many, especially those who are already unhappy with how the system is working. As shown many times throughout history, those who are in a disadvantaged point in society will inevitably want to risk it all for a position or opportunity at the top. Hence why the biggest supporters of communism tend to be like poor uni students, or just the poor and downtrodden in general. Then again, as of the latter has shifted to the right. The greatest flaw of communism is its human nature, as many have said before. Now, much of 19th to 20th century political thought was how to control humanity and its nature. There was an idea that by socially engineering the society to perfection, we could reach whatever political system we aimed for. However, this school of thought inevitably brings human nature, which has consistently shown itself above social engineering, against social engineering, where human nature consistently wins. Specifically, communism encounters the problem of greed, and more specifically, in its leaders. As heard many times before, communism sounds great on paper, but works horribly in practice, and I believe this is why. While mostly supported by the underdogs of society, once those same people reach the top, they can almost never resist getting more power and wealth than they should in a perfect communist system. Human nature specifically blocks the core principles of communism from working. This is why human nature is the greatest of communism's many issues. Additionally, being utopian in nature, the movement has always suffered with fractures. Communism has morphed so much that I have to call this ideology theoretical communism, as every single time it has been tried, it creates its own sub-ideology like Marxism or Leninism or Maoism or etc. Now, Marx would be rolling in his grave if he saw this, which is still considered communism, by the way. Now, communism is crucially important for understanding everything else in leftism, as leftist ideologies stem from it, or at least link to it in principle. Interestingly, communist thought, or at least many of its principles, have been able to seep into the West's institutions and ruling class, to the extent that a large part of our society is using far more of its thought processes or principles than previously, even despite huge anti-communist action and the Cold War. This process itself rapidly accelerated following the fall of the Soviet Union, ironically a communist country itself, manifesting in the leftist resurgence of the 1990s to the 2010s in other forms. The cause of this, I'm still not sure, and I might do a video of it in the future after substantial research. Thank you guys so much for watching this part. This is all part of one larger video about the entirety of the left, and then after that I'll do the entirety of the right. Do you guys agree with me? Do you think I should have been more comprehensive? Make sure to write down your thoughts below, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you.